Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle, the podcast where we take a look at the first episode, the pilot, of a newer series to determine whether it has done its job in convincing us, the audience, to continue with the series, or at least the second episode. It is currently award season, and award season right now is making me feel very inadequate because I haven't watched a lot of the shows that have been nominated this award season, but that's because I like what I like, and I'm also pretty late on the uptake when it comes to watching new shows, which is part of the reason I started The Pilot Principle. I mean, just to give you an example, I'm currently in the middle of watching The Last of Us. I know, but I'm getting there. That's the main point. Depending on when you're listening to this, the Golden Globes have already come and gone, as has the Creative Arts Emmys, which is not to be confused with the Emmys, because that's what I kept doing. And yeah, it was just confusing for everybody. Mostly me though. So the Emmys is on the 16th of January. But let's prep for next year's award season by talking about what's new this year, because on this episode, we will be running through the pilot episode of Disney Plus's Echo. So on The Pilot Principle, I like to begin with talking a lot about the opening, as well as the credits, you know, who starred in it, who wrote and who directed the pilot episode. I then also talk about the overall story, the characters' pace, where I think the serial arc might go based on what has been set up in the pilot episode, and what worked well, and of course what sucked. Because all of these factors are immensely important in helping us decide whether or not we are going to continue with a series. I'm Jen, and let's kick things off with a pilot synopsis for Echo as provided by Disney Plus UK. Maya Lopez flees the criminal underworld of New York City after killing Kingpin. All true, I mean, no lies. No lies were told in this very succinct synopsis. Although I was surprised to see the Kingpin. I was like, do they mean the Kingpin? No, they mean Kingpin. And Kingpin as a title will only make sense to you if you know a little bit about the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. But we will get into that later on. So let us continue on and talk about the credits. The pilot title is Chaffer, and it has an episode length of 51 minutes, which is actually more like 45 minutes because Marvel like to spend a lot of time letting us know about everybody who helped on the production, which is good. I mean, hey, if I worked on the production, I would also want my name in the credits, even though the credits is almost 10 minutes long. Looking at the series as a whole, Echo has a series length of 5 episodes, which feels short to me. Is 5 episodes enough to get across everything that they want to get across? I guess the 5 episodes will tell. That's, of course, if you get that far. The pilot episode, Chaffer, was written by Marion Dare, Josh Feldman, Stephen Paul Judd and Ken Christensen, which, I mean, there's a lot of cooks in this broth, but having a little bit more of a deep dive, it seems like the principal writer was actually Marion Dare. So let's go into a little bit about what Marion Dare has written. And to be honest, that isn't a lot. Her filmography is relatively small. So she wrote 1 episode of The Act, 21 episodes of Better Call Saul, 1 episode of Shantaram, and 3 episodes of Echo. Chaffer, the pilot episode of Echo, was directed by Sydney Freeland, and Sydney Freeland, as a director, has worked on many programs, but these are the ones that are most familiar to me. So she has directed 1 episode of Heathers, the TV series, which I always meant to watch, but actually never got around to, which I don't know, I think I'm glad for. I really love Heathers, the movie. And I'm a massive fan of Heathers the musical, so maybe I should just leave it at that and not ruin things, because I didn't hear great things about Heathers the TV series. But you know, who knows? One day it might just be on and I might have the time and maybe I'll watch the pilot episode. As well as directing an episode of Heathers, Freeland has directed an episode of Station 19, 2 episodes of Grey's Anatomy, 1 episode of Fear the Walking Dead, 1 episode of Nancy Drew, the TV series, again, meant to watch it, didn't watch it, and 2 episodes of Reservation Dogs before directing the episode of Echo. In terms of cast, based on the pilot episode, there isn't that many to talk about. So we have, of course, our main cast member, Alequa Cox, and she plays Maya Lopez. And aside from Echo, where she is in all 5 episodes, the entire series, Cox has also starred in Hawkeye, the miniseries, and that's about it. Now, Cox's Maya Lopez is pretty much the main character, and there isn't anybody that we get too much else of in the pilot episode, as you'll see later on. But I would also pinpoint Vincent D'Onofrio as a principal cast member too. Now, D'Onofrio had a major role in the Daredevil TV series, as well as this. He starred in Emerald City, which I'm sad to say I watched the entire series of. And I'm sad to say it because I didn't even enjoy it. He also had a long-running role in Law & Order Criminal Intent. I'm talking 141 episodes, according to IMDb. as well as having a role in the movies Full Metal Jacket and Men in Black. Now, a quick shout out to Tantu Cardinal, who also stars in the pilot episode of Echo. She stars very briefly and plays the character of Chula. Most recently, Cardinal has starred in Killers of the Flower Moon, where she played Lizzie Q. She's also had a role on the series New Amsterdam, and I distinctly remember her from starring in Stumptown. Stumptown also starred Kobe Smulders in the main role, and it only lasted one series, and I kind of did hope it would get another one because I kind of enjoyed it. A few other random picks from Cardinal's filmography: she also starred in See, Outlander and Frontier. And that's all we have for the selected cast list, so quite a small one, but the series itself is rather contained, so it does kind of make sense. Now, in terms of what drew me to watching Echo, well, Echo is actually the 10th Marvel Cinematic Universe television series, and I was just kind of curious to see what the MCU series landscape was looking like. So I've only really watched WandaVision, Loki, and What If. I mean, I've watched one series of Jessica Jones, that's when it was on Netflix, so before it moved to Disney+. I watched, I think, one episode of Moon Knight, one episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I meant to watch She-Hulk and Secret Invasion and Hawkeye, but I just didn't. I don't know, there's something about the series that doesn't really draw me in. So, you know what, new year, I thought, let's try again. And yeah, well, keep listening to find out how I felt about Echo. Okay, with that all out of the way, now let's take a look at the first 10 minutes of Chaffer, the pilot episode from the MCU series Echo. I always look at the first episode here on the pilot principle because I was always taught that that is the amount of time you have to convince your audience or your reader or what have you to invest in your script, whether that be a feature film script, a pilot script, or that film or pilot episode once the script becomes produced. So the first 10 minutes of Chaffer. So we start with this sort of otherworldly woman who emerges from a pool that looks like it's in a cave that looks out at the galaxy. She's not alone. Other people arise from their separate pools and they gather around this first woman who then drinks from a rock bowl filled with moonlight. That's probably not the best way to describe it, because who knew it was so difficult to describe things that you don't understand the essence of? So hopefully that's painted a half decent picture for you. Anyway, when said woman does drink from said rock bowl filled with moonlight, she starts to glow and a woodpecker appears. Then all of a sudden the cave, cave overlooking the galaxy type thing, collapses in on the woman and all the people with her. And then suddenly they are on Earth. Their immortal-esque appearance crumbles away and this tribe of people follow the first woman, who we learn is Chaffer, as she walks into the distance. This is the story of the first Choctaw people, as told and signed by Bonnie to her cousin Maya, who is deaf. It is 2007 and the girls are playing in a tent while the grown-ups, presumably their parents, laugh and chat away in the moonlight. One set of grown-ups, Chula and Sully, go home, but Chula then sees a woodpecker and has a bad feeling. Sully kind of jokes about her connection with the ancestors, but she says nothing. Meanwhile, it has started to rain, so the girls come inside and Maya's mother offers to drive Maya to get some hot chocolate for her and Bonnie because, of course, they're out. It's dark, it's raining, and as they're driving, Maya's mother realises that the brakes don't work. The car crashes and the accident causes Maya to lose a leg and her mother to die. Chula blames Maya's father, who is apparently some sort of criminal, and asks him to leave. And he does, for New York City, and he takes Maya with him. So that's good, at least. I mean, at least he didn't abandon her, so that's something, I suppose. Now we watch as Maya, with a prosthetic leg, is enrolled in a martial arts class, as her father tells her that he wants her to have a different life from his. And it's as Maya takes her first swing that we cut to the present, and we hit the 13-minute mark, and come to a close on the intro. I think those first 13 minutes were a really good intro. I mean, we get great visuals of the ancestors, even though I don't fully understand what it is that I'm seeing. And we get a good look at Maya's life before everything changes, i.e. the inciting incident. So the accident, that's the thing that propels her life off onto a different track. We also get a glimpse of the kind of life that she's going to grow up around because, as I said, her father is a criminal and her father takes her with him to New York. So we imagine that that's now the life that she's going to see. And so we start to wonder from those first 13 minutes how this new life will inform Maya's character. Taking a look at the main character, singular, That is Maya Lopez. And we meet a lot of Mayas in the first episode. We meet Maya, who is a kid with a mum. Then we meet Maya, who's a kid with a dad only. And then we meet an angry orphaned Maya when both her parents die in the pilot episode. And then we meet Maya the killer as she begins to work with the criminal organization her father worked with after he is murdered. One thing that I don't quite understand about the Maya that we meet in this pilot episode is her motivation. I mean, her motivation makes sense when her father is murdered. She wants to find out who did it, and she's got all this rage, and so, I don't know, she grew up around crime, she's not about to start throwing stones in glass houses, so... I'm not mad that she ended up going to work for a criminal organization, but I'm still curious as to why that was her go-to. I mean, what was she doing before her dad died? Did she have a job? Was she in college? Did she not go to college? There's all these little gaps in her history that we don't necessarily need, but it does feel like something is missing in her motivation to join a criminal organization, to become the right-hand woman of this kingpin. I can't quite say if Maya is supposed to be likable or unlikable, or if we're just supposed to take her as she is. Maya is deaf and one of her legs has been amputated after the accident she was in with her mother. One thing I do appreciate is that we don't dwell on either of these facts. Neither of these things stop her ability to kick ass and fire a gun or ride a motorcycle or whatever it is. One thing I do wonder about Maya is who will be on her side now that she has nobody. What is the plan? What's happening next? Where we see her at the end of the episode is so far removed from where she started. And that's not a bad thing, but I think it circles back to motivation. Like, what does she want and how is she going to get it? Along with our singular main character, we also have a singular antagonist, and that is Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk. Now, Kingpin is a standard big bad, to be honest. I have no idea what his prior motivation was, what his current motivation is, and what he even really does. I mean, throughout the episode, we see him sat at big tables, like with a great view, and he gets driven around in cars and he gives orders, but what does any of this stuff mean? By the end of the episode, though, we do understand that his main motivation will be revenge. And that revenge is directed at his former protege, Maya Lopez. Right, let's hit pause, let's take a quick break and look at what life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. Now, I'm just going to start with what I'm reading, so do with this information what you will, but I am currently making my way through Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I think I'm only just about 100 pages in, so I don't have that much to say about it. However, I did think it would be gripping me a lot more by this point. I mean, I'm interested in the characters, but I haven't been reading it every day, though I have been thinking about it, so I guess that's a good sign. I went to see my first movie in the cinema of 2024, and that was The Boy and the Heron. And I know it recently won a Golden Globe, spoiler alert. However, I think I ended up giving it like a 2.5 on Letterboxd. For me, there's a level of the story that was just missing. There's like a weird disconnect. Like, I understood that it was about grief and connecting with the past, and there was an element of time manipulation / travel, but do you know what? It just didn't all click together for me. I mean, I think the voice acting was really good. The images were, of course, phenomenal, but as a piece of storytelling, And I've also seen much better Studio Ghibli films. So for me, it just wasn't up to par, but we move. Congratulations to them and their Golden Globe. But I mean, personally, I'm hoping that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse wins everything in the animation category. So I said what I said. TV Time, which is the app that I use to log whatever TV that I'm watching, has finally released their Wrapped. And I always find that they release it really late. I mean, same with Letterboxd. It's like not quite mid, but it kind of feels like mid-Jan to me at this point. And I'm already moving on from my 2023. I'm trying to live the moment here, people. But here's what my stats were looking like. So I watched a total of 549 episodes of television in 2023. This was approximately over 48 shows. And that accumulated to 375 hours, which works out to roughly 15 days. So, those are the numbers to beat. So did anybody actually manage to watch 1,000 episodes of television? I'm just curious because I watch a lot, but I actually don't watch that much TV. I mean, I really should be watching much, 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 much more. But if you think about it, 549, I mean, I'm not about to embarrass myself by trying to do math right now, but there are 365 days in a year. 365 times 2 is more than 549. And the reason I say that is because it's quite easy to watch 2 episodes of television a day. For me, averagely, I'll watch something while I'm on a lunch break, and then I'll watch something in the evening as a standard. I mean, that's not even talking about lying around on the weekend and just binge watching things. So yeah, I mean, I feel like 549 is an easy number to beat. So if you've beat that number, let me know, because I want to learn your ways and I want to be you in the future. Now, in terms of what I'm currently watching, I finally caught up with season 2 of The Lazarus Project. So The Lazarus Project is a Sky Max original series, which is it's so bloody hard to describe, but it's basically based on time travel. And that's all I can say on it, because if I start to try to break down to you the ways in which they can or can't manipulate time, it gets a bit trippy. All of this is just to say that I really enjoyed series 1. I pretty much reference it anytime it can come up on the Pilot Principle. So I was a bit apprehensive about series 2, just because, you know, when you just really enjoy that first series, then you're like, oh, will the sequel be any good? This sequel absolutely bloody slapped. I'll tell you that much. It was so good. I binged it over the course of a weekend. I think it's 8 episodes. It was really enjoyable. It's just moral dilemmas, just the manipulation of time, which I love. And I really hope that it gets a series 3. And if it does, I'm already looking forward to watching it. Finally, on the TV scape, I'm in the middle of watching Percy Jackson, and I'm going to refrain from saying anything until all the episodes have been released and finished, which I think still won't be for another 4 or 5 weeks, but I'm watching it. That's all there is to say on that. I am watching the new Percy Jackson series. Okay, let's head back into talking about the pilot episode of Echo. But first, follow at Pilot Principle on Instagram and Twitter/X, where we can chat about the latest in film and TV and books. Now, in terms of what I really enjoyed about Chaffer, Maya is the bad guy. I just want to get that out of the way, because I didn't see that coming. I didn't know that we'd be following the bad guy. Like, she is full on a criminal. She's not at the end of a redemption arc. We watch in this episode as she beats people up and holds up a gun and shoots it. So multiple times. And at the end of the episode, which is probably one of my favorite lines, she signs to someone, "The Kingpin had his run. It's time for a queen." I said, oh, okay, am I rooting for you? Do I want you to be queen? Maya? I was here for it. So that was, yeah, bars. I'm here for the bars. And I'm kind of here for her look too. Like, she's like a cool goth. I don't know. Her hair at one point was just down and it's like inky black, and she looks really dark and moody, and she rides a motorcycle and she has like boots. Yeah, she's cool. Like, is that what it looks like to be cool? Because that's not what I look like when I look in the mirror. So that was definitely some of my favorite elements. I guess Maya, it looks like, was my favorite element of Chaffer. Even though I don't fully understand what's going on internally, externally, rise queen. On the flippity flip side, in terms of what I didn't like, do you know what? I didn't catch anyone's names. I sound like a parent who's about to pick up their kid from school. And what were your friends' names? I just didn't catch them. They're all just mumbling. For some reason, I thought I wasn't listening, but I'm pretty sure I was listening. I just didn't catch many people's names. I never caught Maya's mum's name. I didn't catch Maya's dad's name. I mean, I caught Bonnie, which is her cousin, and her and yeah, and I don't know if Chula and Sully are her aunt and uncle, or if they're her granddad and her grandma. Like, I just don't know. So I think some clarity on who's who and their sort of familial roles would have been much appreciated from me. And also, something that I was a bit disappointed with was the sound. Now, this could just be from my own experience of watching movies and TV shows where lack of hearing really plays into the overall sound design of the program. So something like The Sound of Metal and A Quiet Place. So because they can't speak in The Quiet Place, or in The Sound of Metal, he's losing his hearing, sound plays in really interesting ways for the audience. And I think I was actually kind of expecting the sound on Chaffer and Echo in general to really reflect how Maya hears things, and it just wasn't there, like, at all. I think there's 1 or 2 moments of silence, but that's it. Now, before I get into whether or not I will be continuing with Echo, let us tick off a few elements of the pilot episode. So, as a reminder of the synopsis, Maya Lopez flees the criminal underworld of New York City after killing Kingpin. And just to add, for me, I probably just assumed that she killed him for good reason, or she killed him by accident, or something. But no. No, Maya straight up holds the gun up to his face and she pulls the trigger. This is the bad guy. Despite what her reasons were, she did what she did. Anyway, so on the pilot episode, I have to say there was a bit of a Marvel surprise. I mean, Kingpin, didn't see that coming. Charlie Cox's Daredevil and Clint Barton's Hawkeye all feature in the pilot episode. Hawkeye was, of course, part of the whole MCU film universe, Avengers type situation. Daredevil had his own series on Netflix, which then, of course, moved to Disney+. And Kingpin actually was part of that Daredevil series, which I had no idea about. For me, I just know Kingpin from the Spider-Man animated series from Fox Kids days. So I was a bit like, oh, Kingpin, didn't know you were invited to the barbecue. That being said, now I don't know how much all of this actually added to the story of Maya Lopez herself and Echo. So, in terms of the quality of writing, I didn't cringe. It's pretty average. Like I said, I enjoyed a couple of bars here and there, but pretty standard. The setting, I think, could have worked a lot better. Like, Maya lived in New York City. It didn't really ever feel like she was in New York City for the times that we saw New York. So really, she might have been anywhere. The pace, for me, was just completely off kilter. We had so many starts and stops to the story, it felt like. Maya as a kid, break. Maya as a teenager, break. Maya as an adult, break. Maya moving on to a new city. Maya returning home, end. It was just a bit stop-start for me, and I think the pacing could have flowed a lot better throughout the pilot episode as a whole. And in terms of the serial arc, unclear. Completely unclear. At the end, there's a bit of a hint, and that's when Maya delivers her line, "The Kingpin has had his run, it's time for a queen." Oh, she wants to take over the whole thing? Didn't see that coming, fine. But, yeah, the serial arc, like I said, it was just completely unclear. So is that what she's going to do for the rest of the series? Just take over the Kingpin's business? But why did she have to return home to do this? Now, in regards to an end of episode hook, spoiler alert, yes, the synopsis says that Maya kills Kingpin. Oh, psych, he's still alive. That is why. 2 in the head, 1 in the heart. Like, don't just go for the one shot. If you're going to kill, make sure they're dead. So Kingpin, who is still alive, will be coming after Maya. So that would also filter into the series arc, and it makes for a decent end of episode hook. Now, they're really cheeky, the MCU, because they did a whole this series on. But you know what? Fair enough, because this technically counts as being part of the pilot episode, but you're also trying to entice me to watch the rest of the series by telling me what's in the rest of the series, even though I'm supposed to be judging it on just what's in the pilot episode. So, like I said, cheeky, but fair enough. You have to use whatever tactics you can in these streets to get people to stay in your lane. Now, the most interesting thing that came out of the this series on section is Kingpin comes out and says a line, "You want an empire, you want a war, you'll have it." So I guess that tells us that there will be some sort of war ensuing. But I mean, is that war really going to be taking place between a 60-year-old man and like a 30-year-old woman? I don't know. We'll see. Or won't we? Because now there's only one question left. Will I be continuing with Echo? Pause for dramatic effect? No. Based on the pilot episode alone, as I said with the pacing, it was a bit too stop and start. We had 3 different introductions. We had Maya as a child. That made sense. We get a bit of backstory as to how Maya got from her hometown in, I want to say, Oklahoma, to how she got to New York City. And, you know, we get an understanding that her dad is a criminal. Yeah, all of that makes sense to me, sure. And then we have like just a really long montage where she's just being a criminal. And then she returns home and starts reconnecting with people. And we've got the whole ancestors thing going on. And then we've got the whole Kingpin thing going on. And none of these elements were done well enough to convince me to overlook the shortcomings of the other elements. The second reason why I won't be continuing is because Echo felt like I'd walked into the middle of something. Like, who is Kingpin? Like, who is Mike? Like, what is going on? Like, why was her dad working for them? It's almost like you walk into a movie, but you've missed the first 20 minutes and your brain is just trying to play catch up to understand where all of the pieces fit in together to make the film what it is. And I just kind of felt like that the entire time I was watching it. And finally, I stand by Maya. Maya is a cool bitch, but I just don't care about her enough at this stage. I don't feel sorry for her. I'm not rooting for her. And to be honest, if I never saw her again, would I even recall that I ever met her to begin with? Which is harsh, but true. But of course, that is just me. Now, you might enjoy Echo because you will pretty much just watch anything that Marvel makes. So Marvel heads, assemble. Another reason to potentially give Echo a try is because it's only 5 episodes and all of them are already out, and it's basically the length of a recent Scorsese or Nolan movie. So sit down, binge, potentially enjoy. And another reason to watch it is for the culture, which is, to be honest, what was pulling me to possibly continue. Maya and her family are of Native American descent, and it would be really interesting to sort of learn more about the culture through Echo. And that is pretty much the only thing that is pulling me on to potentially continue, but I ain't gonna do it to myself. We have to make those tough choices, people. Now, in terms of a pilot score, I would give Chaffer, the first episode of Echo, a 2 out of 5. There were about 3 different backstories and start and stops, and so you really couldn't get into what the pilot episode was trying to tell you about the series as a whole. It's a 5-episode series, and I expected the pilot to be chocked full of action and information, and it wasn't that. And I only realized after I watched it that this was a spin-off of Hawkeye, the series, and to be honest, that tracks because it feels like I'm missing little bits of information that I might have gotten from watching Hawkeye, or even from watching Daredevil, because that's where Kingpin had more of a role to begin with. And finally, to be honest, I just wasn't that engaged. There were 1 or 2 cool fight sequences. The intro with the ancestors was really cool, but I lost interest very, very quickly. And it looks like I'll be thinking twice before pressing play on Marvel Series number 11. Now that we've hashed out the fundamental principles, will you be giving the pilot episode a watch? Or have you already binged every episode of Echo? Follow and chat to me over on Thread, Instagram, or Twitter/X at Pilot Principle, and I will catch you on the next episode. Aww.